Welcome to another Faithful Question session. Happy to see everybody this evening. Glad to see everyone in person. There's a lot of planning that went into this one tonight. Doing a panel is very different than me just blabbering here. So we're very excited tonight. A little bit of nerves maybe too, but we're excited to have you all. Let us begin with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, you gave us the gift of faith so that we can follow you and do your will in this world. Help us to understand how we can be faithful stewards of that gift and how to share it with others. We ask all of this through Christ our Lord and Savior. Amen. Okay, so tonight's topic is how can I evangelize my non-Catholic friends? And I think you could substitute family, co-workers, a number of different things in there. This is not just friends, but the mindset, I think, starts with peers more so than family members. The thought is that who best to find out what we can do to help than people who have recently been on this journey, who have recently come to the faith in the last handful of years, or since myself being the final person, the last 25 years, to get a sense of what it was that moved them, what it was that got them over the hump as they were going through the journey, what were the pieces that were important to them. And so we have 5 very generous volunteers who came forward when I sent out a request to many of the converts that I know. Layla over on the far side here. Vanessa and Mario will be going in the first half. Then after the intermission, we'll go to Cheryl Ann, Megan, and finally myself. And so they'll be sharing both their story, and then we sat down ahead of time and talked about all the kind of big things and split up, topics that we wanted to share. So each of them has like one key point that they'll kind of wrap up with as the thing they want to make sure they share. And so we'll just go through one by one. A few introduction slides. Asking questions. We're going to hold the question. Normally, I let people raise their hand. We will have just 2 times for questions tonight, but that'll be right after the intermission and right at the end, kind of for each half. Obviously, the questions try to be sensitive to that these people are sharing their lives and sharing it on YouTube. So, don't be hold them too much to the fire, but. If you do want to ask a question at the time, raise your hand, wait for the microphone, because the people on YouTube want to hear your question. And then make sure when you're talking, you hold the microphone very close to your mouth, because it's a distant, sensitive microphone. And if you can't hear yourself over the speakers, you don't have it close enough. And then hand the mic back when you're done. For those of you on the live stream, we'll have that same ability to ask questions. What you want to do is on YouTube, you need to get logged in with some sort of Google account, whether that's your Gmail account or a YouTube account, whatever it may be. Any Google-related account can do a login. Go ahead and get logged in. That'll open up the chat session, and just in the chat session, start the question with all capitals, Deacon Question, and then in the same comment what your question is. And we'll do our best to answer them. If for some reason you have escaped Google, congratulations, but you can also go to deaconken.org/blog/chat for an open chat room, and we're monitoring them both. The goal for tonight is really to give you a sense of how everyone's journey is a bit different. We all have different places we start from and different paths that we go on. And so it's good to get a sense of the diversity of people's paths, and that's why we have the panel. But you will also see in that a lot of common themes, things that resonate with, that are things that happen over and over again. And so I think these are some of the most important things because of the things we can most latch onto to know that they're things that we can work with. And then finally, sometimes we need to be remembered that there are people out there who are genuinely searching for truth and genuinely will come to the Catholic faith. I think sometimes we get a little worried that, we're kind of stuck here and we're losing members and there's not positives. But I can tell you with confidence, we have people coming to the faith all the time. Every year, the diocese has a ceremony where everybody from the diocese comes down to the cathedral, and they pack that cathedral 5 times over every year with converts. So people are coming to the faith. And so hopefully their story will inspire you to have confidence in your faith and also to share it with others. And with that, we were a little unsure on microphones, and so that's going to be the toughest part of tonight. I'm going to switch to this one and then hand this to Layla while I give an introduction for her. So, Layla came to us, to the RCIA program in the middle of the pandemic. She was one of those people who I think the pandemic kind of shook her. She recognized that she needed to be thinking about, more profound things. And so she came, I think at first on Zoom when we were not able to meet in person. She was one of the brave ones who was willing to share her life story on Zoom. So I guess she's willing to share it on YouTube too. And it's been a joy to have her in RCIA, and very happy to have her come forward and share her story.
Awesome. Can you hear me?
Sounds good.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Thank you. Hi, my name is Layla, and I'm going to try to talk and do this whole thing all together here. So I was originally born in Bosnia, and I grew up there until there was a war in, sorry, I'm swallowing the mic here. So there was a war in 1991, 1992, and my family and I escaped in the middle of the night through the mountains, no roads, no headphones, no headlights. And we made it to Croatia, where we lived for 2 years as refugees there. And after that, we came to America as refugees. And we were brought here through the Red Cross and the Catholic Church. And in my experience as a refugee, I got to witness the very best of humanity. The people that took the chance, that took the time to hear what other families were going through, how they could help from the smallest things, building a desk for me so I could do my homework, giving me an extra ice cream scoop because we couldn't afford it. But I also got to witness the people that were going through hard times and couldn't see me and my family through their eyes, and they were struggling through their own issues. So through that experience, I really grew with knowing that there's always going to be an opportunity, a chance to be charitable and to be kind. There's something always there. There's an opportunity. So when we came to America, my mom remarried, and my dad would, say grace on special occasions, or when his parents were visiting, we would go to church. But religion and faith was not really a priority in my family because of the conflict in Bosnia and part of it being religious-based. It was just not something that we talked about a lot. But again, in every turn, I just felt there was something more. There was something there. I always felt like I had some sense of security. Something had to be helping us throughout this whole journey that we've been through. So growing up, I had friends that would be like, oh, I got to go to church today. My parents are making me. And I'd say, I'll go with you. And then, we'll go, we'll hang out, we'll do the churchy thing, and then go have lunch or do whatever. And so I was exposed to different churches, to different masses, and I always found them really intriguing and beautiful, and there was something about it. But I was always super intimidated. I would go to church, and that was that. And I didn't have to worry about, learning more. And as I was growing up, I had mentors in my careers and women that would approach me, and we would talk about faith, and they would bring me the Bible or books and things like that. And it was really helpful because they would try to listen to me where I was in my space, where I was career-wise or marriage-wise or just my age. And it was beneficial to me because I got to open up and ask those questions, but I still just didn't feel like I connected with what they were saying. So COVID hits, the COVID times, and my family and I had just moved here to Placer County from the Bay Area. I was struggling. I had to learn how to work from home. I was feeling like I was being a horrible mom. I have 2 little daughters, and I was struggling career and not being the primary parent, and my husband was the primary parent, and I just didn't feel like I was a great version of myself, and it was really hard. And I remember one night just laying in bed, my husband was asleep, and I just started bawling, and I said, okay, this is it. I know that there is something more. I need help. I need help. God, I think that's you. By this time, I had read books. I had, had enough curiosity and knowledge that I knew it was God. But I didn't know what path. I didn't know which faith. And I said my prayer, went to bed, and woke up. The weeks to come, things just started falling into place. And it's kind of funny. When you decide to take that leap, when you give it up, you say, okay, I'm here, I'm ready. Things just happen. So Mama Mary, our Blessed Virgin Mary, she's always kind of there to be a graceful reminder for moms especially, I feel, that it's okay, And I truly believe that she kind of brought me into Catholicism. She just kept appearing everywhere, and then I started reading about her, and then Jesus, and then I discovered the rosary. And I started praying the rosary and realizing that the mysteries that I'm praying is the Bible itself. And it was beautiful. And it was that meditation and that peace and comfort that I needed to kind of slow down and then just relax a little bit. And then I could, figure out where to go next, which was the RCIA program here. And with the RCIA program, every week we learn so much. Rita, Carol, all of the wonderful people that are involved, and Nancy, of course, they really take the time to teach you and to create a space that's really comfortable, and you learn how to read the Bible. You learn the history behind Catholicism, and it is a real history. I mean, what other religion is so historical? And so once I started going to RCA, I met my sponsor, who's also my godmother, and she was my first gift. She was so wonderful, taking me under her wing, asking me questions. When I didn't feel comfortable, she would say, well, what resonated? What didn't resonate with that? And what are you confused about? Well, I think I'm kind of confused about that too. Sure enough, the next week, whoop, her hand would go up. Hey, we're kind of confused about this. Can you explain it more? And it just took so much of the pressure off of me. I didn't feel like I have to be the one to ask. I had someone looking out for me, and it was so helpful. And she would invite me out to different activities. She just called me a few weeks ago to take me to the premiere of Chosen. So it's all these little things that she provided, these safe pockets. And talking to me, she knew I was busy, I have a career, so she would resonate with that. And it was wonderful. And like I said, once I decided to go for it, everything kind of like had little moments and little circles. And, I still struggled being a mom and feeling like I didn't commit enough time to my children, but the little things were there. When I would see them off to school, I wasn't able to drop them off at school. My husband did it, but I would watch them by the door. Every day when I would open up the door, I would see a praying mantis. And that only started after RCA and after I started really opening myself up. And I always thought of that as like my little gift and saying like, hey, you're good. You're bringing the knowledge to yourself, which in turn brings it to your family, and it's okay. And then lastly, one full circle moment for me was at the end, when I was finally baptized that night. I had so many supportive notes, those notes that you guys write, the whole parishioner, they're so wonderful. We all read them, and the little gifts that you give, they mean a lot. But this kind lady came up to me, and she was from the Rosary group. She's very involved here, and she said, I've been praying all night throughout the entire Mass. I kept praying. I have this rosary. I know I needed to give it to someone. I really wanted to, but I wasn't sure who, and I just kept praying on it, and I heard it belongs to you. It needs to go to you. And so she handed it to me, and I thanked her, and she said, this rosary is actually from Medjugorje, and Medjugorje is actually in Bosnia. And there's no way she would have known. There's no way. I had never told other than our RCIA group. So I just felt like, okay, that was my last little gift. and last layer of this beautiful cake that I get to eat every single day and enjoy and share with my friends and family. So that's kind of my faith journey. But what helped me along the way, like what really resonated with me, it's when people took the time to listen to me, when they met me where I was in my life and didn't push themselves on me, when they saw beyond the surface and when they were patient with me. You know, I've had people kind of pray for me and pray on me, and it was in their own way, but it didn't resonate. I needed to take the time. So maybe you do need to be patient and try a few different ways and a few different times to approach whoever you're trying to connect with. Oh, sorry. Wasn't me, I'm sorry. The last thing is take the time to accompany people. We're not comfortable, even if we've been to Mass on our own, if we've done it for years, doesn't mean we're comfortable. Doesn't mean we know when to bow, when to sign the cross. Be that person to say like, hey, are you comfortable with this? Just so you know, when you go in, this is what you do. And just dumb it down. Even if you know, just pretend like you've never done it and put yourself in other people's shoes. How, especially with the readings, you know, how do they resonate with you? Inquiry. If anybody is interested, have them go to the inquiry. That's where I asked all the silliest questions, starting with, what do I call Mr. Ken Crawford? And he's told me it's Deacon. And I said, oh, gotcha. The other thing is you can watch movies, you can listen to podcasts, you can do all kinds of things that are not pressure-filled, but are enjoyable and just kind of exciting. Hey, this is new, I saw it, you want to see it with me? And that's kind of where it all made sense for me. So thank you all for taking the time to listen to my story. I hope it helps you. I hope it encourages people who are out there kind of on the fence. Just know you're never wrong, and just try your best to find your way. So thank you.
Okay, and I think Rita would be very upset if I didn't push the value of being a sponsor with how much Layla did a good job of talking about the value of the sponsor. A big part of what people need is accompaniment, and you'll have opportunities for that in your life that aren't related to, you know, someone who's already made the decision to join, but one way you can do it for those who have made the decision is to be a sponsor. And we need a sponsor for every single person who comes to RCIA, and where we find ourselves using the same people over and over too often. So if you would feel inspired to every Sunday morning be with someone who is making the journey, we're always glad to have you, and we always try to match you with somebody who's in a similar place in life and you know, that will resonate with you. Because accompaniment is very, very important. Faith is a communal thing, and so therefore having people that you are going through your faith journey with is very important. And sometimes that's communally in the whole congregation, but mostly actually it's very personal, and so that kind of accompaniment is very important. Okay, next up we have Vanessa. We had this kind of weird Venn diagram going on here because these two joined at almost exactly the same time. But these two have their similarities, and then there's this kind of weird thing going on. But anyway, Vanessa did come also during the pandemic. She was, as you'll hear in her story, I think was even more so driven by concern for her children. She came very much wanting to really light the world on fire for her kids. And so she was very passionate about that right from the very beginning, and she was always a great person, very serious about wanting to be a very good mother. So Vanessa, welcome.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, I'm Vanessa. Before becoming Catholic, I would attend churches with family and friends, but only for special occasions. So my whole life, I would just follow what I thought was best for me the whole time. And after 40 years, I realized it only goes so far. So when my husband and I decided that I would be a stay-at-home mom, I was super excited. But with that, for 3 years, I was struggling because I didn't have a career title. I was struggling because I wanted to be a good mother, and my husband was working a lot at the time. And so I had someone in my life that passed away, and then I was just exhausted and just kept going. But so what I did was I turned to social media. And I was going to social media, and I found, the perfect moms. Well, with that, scrolling and looking and trying to get ideas every day, I became envious, jealous, sad, angry. And with that, I started blaming my childhood. I started blaming my childhood for my parenting decisions. I was on the phone with family and friends just complaining what my parents did or did not do. It was very exhausting, but I did that for about 1.5 years. And and then watching social media, every time I was losing my motherly instinct, I felt like, because I would do something with my kids, and then I would feel like I'd go on and I'd see someone else do something, and I was like, and I was disappointed I should have did it that way or did it better. So with my motherly instincts going away, and reaching out to family and friends, I was seeking advice from them, but they were unfortunately not giving me, go to church and pray. It was new age stuff. You need healing books. So I was reading books, different authors and healers, crystals, essential oils for emotions. I was manifest. Why don't you meditate? I did all that for about 1.5 years, and it was temporary. It worked. Not really. So after trying all that, I was in, when I had my conversion moment. I was at my chiropractor's office, and after the appointment, he asked me to wait in his office. And it was in Auburn. It was in the woods. It's beautiful. So sitting there, and I was looking out the window, and I was looking at the ivy and the trees, and I can hear like the birds chirping. And in his office, someone left some garden vegetables. So I was smelling basil and tomatoes, and I was just sitting there looking out the window saying, I'm tired of this. Something's not working. I'm angry. I'm trying all these things. I'm doing all these things, and I am even more exhausted. Something's not working. And I'm just staring out the window, and someone comes in. And I look over, and before that, so someone comes in and says something to me, and I look over, and this lady says, "You're so beautiful," or something with beautiful. I can't remember, and I was like, "Oh, thank you." And I just stared at her, and we were staring at each other for a moment, and then I look away, and I looked out the window, and I went, oh my gosh, was that Jesus? And let me tell you, the whole time I'm looking out the window before, I was saying, do I confront the person I'm angry at, or do I go to church? And I've never said, go to church this whole time. And that's what I was saying to myself before she walked in. And I was like, I have to go to church. And then I was like, was that really? Can that happen? And I was just sitting there shocked. And I just got up and left. But when I left, though, I was like, I had this like calm feeling, but excited, like, oh my gosh, can that happen? Can that happen? Can you see Jesus? Can that really happen? And I called my mother-in-law, who is Catholic. I don't even know how she came to mind. And I just called her and I said, can that happen? She goes, yeah, of course. And I'm like, what? So I'm driving home and I'm like, I have to go to church. I got to go to church. I got to ask, can this really happen? And I was like, I can't go to church. You have to have an appointment. I can't just show up. Like, ridiculous. So of course I didn't come here, and I live down the street. And I went home and I told my husband, and he goes, yeah, that can happen. And I was like, what? That Sunday I went to church, did not know what was going on, but I just kept going. But every time I would hear the scriptures, I would hear the homily, I thought I would hit my husband. I'm like, he's talking to me. I was like, he's just talking about what I was just asking you this week, or what I was thinking about this week. And he would just laugh. And I just kept like, why? I was like, why every week does I keep getting my answers? I'm like, this is weird. But I just kept coming, and I was just looking forward to listening to the scriptures. And eventually later, I wanted to know what was going on through the Mass, like when we stand up, sit down, things like that. But I was just more looking forward to the homilies. So thank you for listening to my story. Let's see. So as I was continuing to learn and go to church, these are some of the things that I wish I had, the resources that I wish I was introduced to at the time, because I think they would have been a little more helpful with, maybe I didn't want to go to Mass, or like if someone invited me to church, I don't think I would have went. How about this? I was going to church for special occasions, my children's baptisms, things like that. But when I was talking to my family and friends and saying I was reading these books, I'm listening to these podcasts, I'm on these Instagrams, it would have been helpful to, if I was introduced to like a Catholic author. When I first started coming, like Matthew Kelly, I started with those books. It was an easy read, but it just resonated with me, so I was reading those, and then with that I was finding other authors. So I like to read, so I would have liked someone to have gave me some books. I like to listen to podcasts, so if someone could have introduced me to a different person in a podcast, that would have been helpful. So I kind of just want to say, when somebody is talking to you about maybe where they're getting their resources, if they like to watch TV, introduce them to EWTN. If they like to listen to radio, I like Relevant Radio. So in the car, recommend something like that can get them started. So these are some ideas. So that's it. Thank you.
One of the great things about resources like this is they're very low pressure. If you sit down and you talk to somebody, there's a reciprocal expectation, and even if you don't mean to do this, they're going to feel a little trapped, that they have to engage with you. It's not polite to disengage. It's not polite to say, what's wrong with you? You're supposed to listen nicely. Where resources allow people to explore in ways where there's not very much pressure. You could say, oh, have you considered this? And they can go look at it, or they cannot go look at it. It makes a much low-pressure environment. And it also has this kind of waterfall domino effect, because they get a Matthew Kelly book, and that leads them to Dynamic Catholic, which leads them to, and all of a sudden, there's 74 books in. So definitely resources is a wonderful way to go, and there are so many of them that are very compelling. Next up, we have Mario. I actually met Mario not through the RCIA process, but through his daughter. His oldest daughter, yes, and my youngest daughter are the same age, and they were in faith formation classes together. So I met him and his wife through that when they would drop him off and pick him up and all of that. And then a couple years later, he came to us through RCIA. So welcome, Mario.
Thank you. I'm Mario Roscoe. Good evening. I was basically raised Catholic, as many Latinos are. It was very familiar to me. In every household I went, there was a Virgen de Guadalupe in there, so it wasn't an odd thing. I mean, it was always in my face. It was never anything I shied away from. I was baptized as an infant, and that's kind of as far as it went. Not that my parents weren't religious, but I think they were kind of on two different levels as far as their love for going to church and doing everything in that aspect. It was more of a traditional type of Catholicism. Growing up, I attended many different churches. I was always open to religion. I had friends that were many different religions, so I went to all different Sunday schools, churches as a teen, the fun ones, went to Catholic. I went to everything, and it was good. I knew church was good. I knew religion was good, but I didn't really have a preference or calling. But I always considered myself Catholic. If I was asked, I was like, yeah, I'm Catholic. Going through my life, I finally met my wife, and she was actually going to a Protestant church here in town. They had some different groups that she was part of, but once we started going, I was like, I really like this. This is fun. I'm enjoying it. She's like, okay, well, now I need to go a different direction. I'm like, well, what are you doing? You're throwing me a curveball here. Now, I have this regimen of going to church now, and now you want to take me elsewhere. So she's like, I want to go back to Catholic church. I'm like, fine, whatever. We'll go. I was okay with it. I'm like, this is boring, but man, I think I'm going to go back to the other church. So, as an adult, I'm still thinking this like a child. It's like, I want to go to a concert, have fun. All the lights and bells and whistles and stuff. We were coming a little more regularly, and then we had kids and everything. And once my daughter started going through the faith formation with Deacon Ken, seeing her grow through her faith and just seeing her love for God, I started noticing things. She was always happy. She was telling me about what she learned that day and different lessons that I didn't understand what was coming out of this little girl's mouth. I'm like, who are you? Like, you're talking like a grown-up now. So I'm learning these things through Deacon Ken, through my daughter actually teaching me. She'd even be on the school ground, and she's like sitting there looking at a tree. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm just talking to God. She's like, this is God's tree, I'm like, okay, I guess you're not wrong. It's not weird, I guess. But then she would actually introduce her friends to God. It's like, hey, you guys want to learn about this? This is what I'm doing. And she would even have friends like, who's God? It's like, what's wrong with you? Don't you know this stuff? So seeing her grow and just her freeness to share her love for God, that it was just something that was just so true to her, it just resonated with me. And that's what I saw. Just seeing her walk in faith, and I looked at my wife like, I'm missing something. Like, I never got this. I went all through my life knowing this and that, and yeah, I'm Catholic, but now I'm trying to actually seeing what it means. And just seeing her pure love come out and the way she expressed it, and it was just so genuine and so not forced. It just made me really inspired to want to receive that myself. So, she always has this thing, like, you're finally caught up to me, Dad. She kind of surpassed me in her spiritual journey, and I was like, okay, I'll be there someday. I want to be there with you. So it really inspired me to really focus in on myself and on what it really means. Going to church was just going to church, and now it really means something to me. So I developed a desire for the sacraments, and that's when I signed up to do the RCIA. Inquiry was the first step. You sit around the table, and you just ask questions. There was many people that went through inquiry that I never saw again. They just came to ask questions, and that's what it was about. It was very open, very free, very inviting, and it was just something that made you want to keep coming back. And when I did, it was like, hey, are you ready to take the next step? I'm like, what's going to happen now? Like, what do I do now? Well, it wasn't scary. We started signing up for RCIA. Started it in 2019, and it got all shut down by the pandemic, and that's when we finished. I finished in 2021. Talking to some of my other friends here, they got to actually do a real retreat, which is I'm envious for, because we just did a meeting in this room here. But you know what I mean? It was my time to do it. It was my walk. I completed it, and it's something that really has kind of really mended my family together. And now 3 or 4 of us are done. Now I got a little 6-year-old, and she's ready. She's starting her walk in faith formation. So that's when I really truly figured and understood that the sacraments aren't something that you have to do. It's something you get to do, and they're a real gift. And it's not a chore. It's more of a blessing, and that's when I really understood that. And I remember as a kid, going up and seeing people take the bread and all that, and I'm like, I don't know what that is, but now I know it is God. You're receiving His body. You're receiving Jesus' body, and it's real, and it's really real. So with that, going into going into what I felt was my connection is to evangelize through children. I know many friends and family that are considered Catholic, but they don't even want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. So watching my daughter's pure walk and see that, I think if you could just kind of open your eyes and see that is true and that's pure, you can learn from children. If you can teach your children, you can learn from your children. And I think that's where you would want to start. And that's where I think I started to evangelize through the children. They'll say the truth. It's like, kids say the darndest things, and they'll tell you the truth. It's like, if you want to know something, the kids will tell you. So, it's just keep your eyes open. God's going to speak to you in different ways. He spoke to me in different ways. I always feel it wasn't a huge epiphany, but I think it was when I kind of look back and just see the things that I did witness my daughter going through. Her evolution was really eye-opening. It really got to my heart. We went to a children's ministry where we did the Stations of the Cross in church one day, and I always enjoyed church, and things were beautiful. Stuff was decorated nice, and I enjoyed that and appreciated that. But when the children went station to station and read every station, and they sang every song in between, that was the first time I actually shed tears in church, and I didn't know what it was, and until now I know it was the Holy Spirit touching me. So keep your eyes open to sharing the pureness of the faith, and to know that the way you walk and model your faith is going to make a difference to people, because people find it attractive and they want to be drawn to it. And if the more real you are, the more true you see and share your love for it, I think that is how you're going to connect with more people to bring them in. Thank you guys for letting me share this with you guys. I hope I can reach at least one person out there, and thank you.
Yeah, a couple of quick notes before we have our intermission. You heard a couple of stories where there was that one moment where everything changed. There was a huge juncture in life. And that's a lot of stories are that way, but there are a lot of stories that are not that way, that are much more evolutionary than revolutionary. And Mario more fits that mold. But I think to generalize his point about his daughter, an attractive faith in somebody's life is so attractive. When people see somebody and say, I want what that person has, they will reach out. And so if we can make our faith inspiring, if they can look at us and say, this person has something that I don't have and I want it, they will come to the faith. and that's what Mario's daughter did for him. But it's not just a children thing. It's obviously that was his example, but it's something that can be for all of us. Okay, so we are going to take a 5-minute break. A quick reminder for the live stream folks, we're going to have Q&A afterwards. If you have a quick question for any of them, get it into the comments now, because you're a little bit behind us because of the streaming delays and all that. So put it in now, and we'll have it after the intermission. For the rest of you, we have snacks and everything. There is a jar for food. This is a self-funded operation, so if you don't mind putting in a couple of dollars so that we can have snacks in the future, we appreciate it. And with that, we will see everybody in 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, we're back. All right. We are running a little bit behind, so I do want to keep Q&A to a minimum. Did we get anything online? We did not. Anybody have anything they feel like they really urgently need to ask that maybe couldn't wait for an in-person question afterwards? Okay, we'll take that as a no. All right, so next up we have Cheryl Ann. Cheryl Ann came with her fiance at the time. She's recently married, just about, 2 months ago now? And they had some issues they had to work out, and some other parishes were not very inviting to them. And so we were very thankful to be able to be an inviting parish. I think that'll be a little bit of her story, but welcome, Cheryl Ann.
Hi, good evening. Thank you guys for coming. I'm going to take it back a few more years. My name is Cheryl Ann, and I was baptized Catholic. Let me go ahead and... Wait a minute, I went the wrong direction. Look at me. Okay, this is a little nerve-wracking, just in case you don't know. This is, we're kind of worried that we're either going to swallow the mic or we're going to stumble over our words, so we really appreciate your patience with us. I was raised by Catholics. I was baptized Catholic, and same thing. We had different things, especially in my grandmother's house. My grandmother was a practicing Catholic. Inside in her bedroom, she would have like the Virgin Mary, and she'd have the candles and things of that nature. However, my mom was not a practicing Catholic. So when I would go to my grandmother's house, I would usually go with her to church on Sundays. And so didn't really know the theology. I just went. I was a little girl. I went. Sorry, there's something here. I would go. I didn't really know what was going on. I would come back home. My mother would never say anything to me otherwise. It was just kind of like, okay, you went and spent time with grandma. Now you're back. Hooray. So I got older, up into my teenage years, actually. I was actually, would drive my grandmother to church, so my mother would never go. And we didn't really have that discussion with her whether she wanted to go or not. It was just kind of one of those things. My grandmother's like, if she wants to go, if, God willing, she'll go. And then teenagerhood hit, and like every teenager, we always think we know everything. And we know what's going on because we know what the times are now, and they're not your times then. And so I completely drifted away from the church. Didn't really find anything that was going to fulfill me at that time. I lived in Southern California at the time. I really didn't like the area I was living in. We were poor growing up, too. So one of my biggest concerns for me was, how do I get out of this? I need to figure a way out of being poor. So my focus was, I need to go to school, get an education. Latinohood, it's like education is a big deal. Get a good education, be able to take care of yourself, go into the world, and don't forget about us. And so I was so focused on that, and I ended up moving across the United States to pursue interests and go to school and things like that. And it was so strange because it's like I ended up taking this step where I was still really curious about religion. I studied lots of religions, not in like college study, but like on my own. Like there was something missing, and I'm trying to find it. Something is tugging at my heart, and I cannot seem to figure it out. I studied Judaism. I studied Islam. I studied Wicca. Like I studied all sorts of stuff for many years. So what did I say up here? Study various religions over the past 30 years. I looked at everything trying to find what is it that I am missing. Most of this time, my grandmother, she had passed. She passed away when I was 21 years old. So she was really kind of my confidant. And I don't know why I just never went up to her and when I was younger and say, hey, I have a question about this. Why do they do this in church? what do I need to know? Why is this the rule? Why is this dogma or doctrine and all this kind of stuff? I was never told any of this kind of stuff. And it's really interesting. When you go to RCIA, you're like, oh, that's what that means? So years go by. I'm kind of away from everything. I'm like, okay, I have kids. Life goes on. I had a business, all that kind of stuff. Got divorced. That's a whole nother process when you're getting married in the Catholic Church. Having an annulment is a very interesting experience. So just will say, both of us, my husband, Mr. Fox, we both had to go through the annulment process, which was very difficult, and we were both, and he was baptized Catholic as well. So if you can only imagine, if you are born a Catholic and you have to go through an annulment when you're marrying a non-Catholic, that's a whole different ballgame. So there's a lot that goes on with that. Can it be done? Yes. Just takes a long time. Anyways, to bring up until about 2 years ago. So I was lived in the South probably more of my life. Came back to here. Got reacquainted with my fiance and whatnot. And then during this time, I'm originally from Long Beach, California. And so my mother happened to live down there, and she got very, very sick very quickly. And went to go see her one day. It was June 1st. School had just got out. I went down there to go see her, and she was fine as wine. Here's my list. Can you go buy me all this stuff? So she was. I had her in an assisted living. She was able to care for herself. Everything was great. So I go down there to see her. She gives me things to do. Hey, can you do this, do that? And I'm like, okay, fine. So I go, I do everything, and I'm like, all right, I've been down here a week. I got to go back. My son's back. I got to go take care of everything at home. And about 2.5 weeks later, I get a call from the nurse at the assisted living. And they said that my mother is not doing very well. We are going to send her to the hospital. And so I was like, okay. All right, let's see what's going on. I will be down there as quick as I can. Nobody really wanted to tell you anything because she's in LA and we're here, and that's like a 7-hour drive. And so, yeah, I went down there, and the next thing you know, when I went there, she was in the hospital. All the females are diabetic. She ended up having renal failure, just all sorts of stuff. Everything was going down here really fast. And just mind you, like 3 weeks before that, she was completely fine. Like, she seemed in good spirits. She was very snarky, just like to kind of push your buttons and keep you rolling. And from going from that into someone who's literally laying in the hospital dying. And unfortunately, at that time, I already had plans to go back out to the South. Couldn't get anything like refundable on my ticket, so we ended up having to go out to Atlanta. And while she was here at the hospital, and while I was out there a couple of days later, I happened to be in North Carolina. And walking into a hotel room, I get a phone call on my cell phone, and they're saying your mom is probably going to pass away tonight. And so it was real. It was starting to become really real, really quick. And I won't tell you this. I will tell you this. We did not have the best relationship really at all through my whole childhood. It was kind of one of those things, the last 5 years or so of her life, that we actually ended up having a friendship. And then I really just started to worry. And so while I'm in North Carolina, she's there at the hospital. They set up like an iPad, so I was actually able to be with her as she passed away. But one of the biggest things that worried me, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose it. I was worried about her soul. I know she never went to church, and I wanted to pray for her, and I was so worried about her soul. And during all this whole time, I've been getting these like little things that would come out to me like, you need to come back. Jesus, like, you need to come back. You need to come back. And that was like my thing for her. Like, if she could give me anything of all of the childhood growing up, of the roughness, and it was not the best living condition and everything like that, the one thing she did give me is that she brought me back to the church. Her death has brought me back to the church. For me, wanting her to have basically like her last rites, I'm like, I need to call a priest, can you get in touch with somebody? So it's 2:15 in the morning, North Carolina time. It's 11:15 California time. And that right there was kind of like my sign for me. So I wanted to do that for her, and she did this for me, and that's why I am here. So did try going to another church locally here in Placer County. They were not the most hospitable, unfortunately. I was kind of persistent. I'm like, no, but you don't seem to understand. Like, I kind of want to, I really want to get some more information, and it just wasn't regimented, and they just didn't really want to help me. They're like, well, we can't help you because you're divorced. I was like, really? That doesn't seem very Christian. I'm really like, this is really difficult. So anyways, my fiance at the time, he's like, seriously, can you just please give St. Clair a shot? Just please. I said, okay, well, let me watch it on YouTube first so I can see like what I'm in for, and then we'll go from there. We'll just do some baby steps, right? And I'm like, oh, okay. Charismatic, that's cool. And it's like, okay, maybe I'll go to Mass. And then I'm like, but I don't know. Do I want to go to Mass? I'm like, well, it's been Mass. And then I went to Mass, and then things had changed during the Mass since when I went to Mass when I was younger. So then that was a whole revelation to me. So that was an interesting experience. But I decided to go to inquiry. So went to inquiry, where Rita and Deacon Ken are, and I have to say, you can bring any question that you want to them, and they will be more than happy to give you an explanation. It's a really comforting environment. There's no dumb question. Ask the silliest things. I mean, anything. They actually even have sheets, so if you don't know the question, see, here's the thing. You don't know what you don't know. So as a kid, I did not know what I was supposed to ask my grandmother, and I wasn't going to ask my mom, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And with the help of you guys, you have this like nice cheat sheet. You can ask these questions, and they'll be more than happy to help you. So that's my story. That's my conversion story. So I'm keep messing this thing up, don't I? Go the other direction. Here we go. Okay. So my key point is to do not be afraid of your faith. So don't be afraid to ask questions, no matter how ridiculous that you think they may sound. Attend the inquiry sessions. It's a come and go. Say, I'm not busy, I'm going to go this Wednesday night, and say you're working. I mean, it depends on people's work schedules, your family, if you have kids that play sports, that kind of thing. You can come and go at your own convenience. You can come and go for a year and be like, you know what, I just don't want to commit just yet. I still have lots of questions. So still come ask those questions. Here's the deal. All of this matters because it helps to deepen your understanding of your faith. Even after you are, receive confirmation, even if you're already like Catholic, like you've been confirmed, you've received communion, that whole thing. This whole journey is a process. It's not a program. It's not something that I'm going to be like, okay, by next Sunday when I go to RCIA, I need to know this. I need to be able to feel it. I got to know it. No. There's times when I've read stuff and I'm like, I don't get it. It's not connecting. I need to talk to people. I need to ask other people who are in my group, what does that mean? How does that relate? Like, I don't get it. Like, you need to dumb it down for me. You need to simplify it. And that was one of the beautiful things about RCIA is that you can go in there and you can just have questions. We have great speakers who give us lots of information, and you get a lot of information, but you can take it home and you can read it on your own time. And if you have a question, you can just write something down. You can send them an email if you want. But yeah, that's one of the biggest things. It's like you're always never going to know everything. So for me, I like to do things on my own time. I like to read, or I'll watch different things, or, that type of thing. Whatever's convenient for me at the time. So just remember, not everybody knows everything. And if you have a question, ask somebody. And this is how we're all kind of getting through this together. Like I said, this is a process that we are all on. This is our journey, right? And so, like I said, it's not a program. It's not like ABC. You do it in this order. You're going to learn it this way. And you can't go to B until you're finished with A. It's like, no, that's not the way that it works. So don't be afraid of your faith. Fear stops a lot of people from connecting with God. If you feel God talking to you, go with it. Let it go. So, anyways, that's my story.
Yeah, Cheryl Ann points out something about inquiry that, if you'll notice, everybody's story, they were 90% of the way over the hump when they showed up at inquiry. And that's one of our greatest disappointments in inquiry, is that we don't get people until then. We would love to see them when they're at the 40% place, the 30% place, in that low pressure environment of just being able to talk and ask questions. So don't be afraid when you meet someone who expressed some interest to let them know you're not signing up for the whole program. You're just signing up to talk about what's on your mind. So encouraging them to come to something like inquiry can be very helpful. Yeah, okay. So we'll continue moving along. You're going to just take this, right? Okay. So Megan wants to swallow the microphone. I actually first met Megan's father. He went through RCIA about a decade ago, and then managed to bring his daughter along eventually. So I met her. Your dad brought you the first time, I think, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So anyway, Megan, welcome.
Hello, everyone. If my throat starts closing up, it's just because I'm really nervous. Okay, so as Deacon Ken said, I'm Megan, and unfortunately, you guys don't get a cool About Me slide because I apparently cannot follow directions. So I have my own little cheat sheet, so sorry, please bear with me. I was raised Protestant. I'm half Korean and half American, I suppose. So I was 100% Protestant my whole life. Went to lots of different Korean churches, went to American churches, went to all kinds of them. Can't tell you what denomination because it doesn't, they all kind of mesh together after a while. And I always actually believed in God. I had a very, very deep relationship with God, and that was one of the things that Protestantism really tries to push, is this relationship with God. And it wasn't until I started getting older that I started realizing how one-sided that relationship really was. It was all about what I wanted from God, not what he was asking of me. And so my dad and I were very, very close. We'd always go on long walks and talk about God. He'd always read lots of things, give me lots of videos and stuff. Even when I desperately asked him to stop, he still sends me all kinds of things when I'm at work saying, hey, you should watch this. I'm like, all right, Dad. But he started looking for something a lot deeper, and that's when he started coming to the Catholic Church, and of course dragged me along. Whether I liked it or not, I was coming. And I was like, all right, I mean, it's God, basically, so I'll just go ahead and I'll just start following along and seeing what was going on here. There was a lot of different things than I was used to. There was a lot of up and down. There was a lot of crossing. There was a lot of other prayers and things that I had no idea what these were. I didn't know what this Gloria or anything else was. And it took some time, but I started to really enjoy it. I didn't take the Eucharist for many, many years. As a Protestant, we get the little wafer and the little shot of grape juice, and y'all cheers and cheers God and just drink that. So it was different not being able to have that, having to abstain from it, because it means so much more here, because it actually does mean something here. And so having to abstain from that really, it didn't click for a while how much of an impact that actually was. So I continued to go to Catholic church, but I wasn't fully in. I didn't go to Inquiry, I didn't go to RCIA. I was just kind of along for the ride. And then I remember I joined the Army 10 years ago, And one of the things that I really like to do was during our ruck marches, I would actually sing the Gloria in my head, the way we sing it here. So believe it or not, our Gloria, pretty good marching cadence, actually. And so it was always just things like that just kept me going on with God. Even not being able to go to church for different reasons here and there. There's always like little things that I would ask God, hey, just let me know that you're still there. Just keep me going. And after all these years, I had some hard times trying to, growing up, you think you know things, you could get friends that kind of lead you to different places and stuff. And when I did get older, one of the things that I really discovered I had a deep, deep love of is traveling. I've been to Australia, New Zealand, Korea, Japan, all over Europe and everything. And it's amazing to see all of these new places and all these different people, and you realize how small you are. And really, if anything, it shows you how amazing God really is. But also going to Mass in other countries was a really, really great gift, because it's the same thing wherever you go. So it really just feels like you're just coming home, basically. You're going to hear the same message. You're going to have the same readings. I could be a day and a half ahead of my dad, and we can still talk about what we read, what we learned, because it's the same thing, which is not going to be the case in most Protestant, churches and stuff, because it depends on whatever the pastor wants to talk about that day. It's not going to be the same thing in a different church. So that really stuck with me, that idea of the consistency, the idea of our history, seeing all of it and seeing it all around the world. And that really kind of just brought me to this idea of, what am I doing? It's not just me. This relationship is much more than just me. I'm so small. And it isn't just about me. Sorry. Ooh, that was unexpected. Sorry. So, talking to my dad and my mom too. My mom is also very religious. But my dad said, hey, if anything, just go to inquiry. You don't even have to go to RCIA. Just try out inquiry. I know you got a lot of questions. If you don't want to ask me because I'm your dad, that's cool. Just go. Rita and Ken are there. They really balance each other out. It's a great place to go. So I went, and they were extremely patient, and he was right. They really do even each other out. No matter how ridiculous the question is, even if it's something as small as one giving you hope for your dog's soul, the other one not so much. But it's a great place. It's where you really get to meet a lot of people. And again, you can have any kind of question. And I think one of the biggest things for me was when Deacon Ken and Rita both said, we don't know. And I've never came to the idea that it's okay to have a religion that doesn't know. I don't know if this person is going to heaven or hell. Not really. I'm not God. We don't know. We do have our beliefs. We do, how am I trying to say this? You don't have to have all of the answers exactly right, because we are just humans. We are not God. And so it's very, very comforting to be able to just hand that over. And that really led me into coming into the church a little bit more, to the point where I was just like, yeah, RCIA, let's do it. I enjoy school. I did a lot of it. And, I was lucky enough to get a wonderful sponsor who is also one of our teachers. And it's really cool because we're 50 years apart, and we can sit and talk for like 4 or 5 hours laughing and just enjoying each other's company. And she's just been such a blessing, just because she has so much knowledge to give, and we share it with each other. And I have wonderful friends who I still have. And you just grow together, and it's a true blessing, just RCIA in general. Okay, so that was me. That's how I came here. So my actual slide. is the smells and the bells. I was quite shocked, actually, to find out that some people don't like all of the incense and the statues and stuff. It's 100% my jam. I'm here for it. And definitely was one of those things that, again, coming from a Protestant background, I wasn't used to it. You know, you walk into Mass, and there's this huge sense of grandeur. You know, we have all of, the stations of the cross. We have the cross, and we have, just all these statues and everything else. And some people might say, oh, it's too much, or, we're focusing on the wrong things. But why would it not give you that sense of awe when you're coming before a king? I mean, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But, just that instant sense of walking in, and you, again, just that feeling of feeling small but not insignificant. You're a part of something so much bigger, and just the wonderfulness that comes from that. And I'm a very, I'm really into all the sensory stuff. I work for the courts, and I actually have all kinds of like fidget spinners and kinetic sand and stuff at my desk because I like the sensory things. So the fact that our faith is a very tangible faith in all of our senses, like the aspect of sight, everything that we see, it has history to it. It has the constant, presence of our faith just consistently there. The smells of the incense, of the flowers and stuff. So again, if you think there's not enough incense, you're wrong. No, I mean, if you think there's too much incense, you're wrong. There's never enough. The sounds of the prayers and the chants and the songs and stuff. I remember one time I went to a monastery down in Southern California. It was still a practicing Catholic monastery, and I was Protestant. I had no idea what was going on, but I just sat there and I prayed, and I felt the echoes of all of the prayers of my brothers and sisters before me. And it was just an amazing, amazing experience because they still had musical chants and stuff like that going on. We still have the taste of the Eucharist. And when you have abstained from the Eucharist for so long because it was just a little cracker, finally being able to come to it and having that taste is, oh my gosh, it's absolutely mind-blowing. I remember me and Cheryl Ann actually looked at each other and we both said, we actually don't have to abstain from it anymore. We get to take that now. And how amazing that is just to be able to have it. And I have a veil, a personal choice. I like the veil. I enjoy it. And so when I have the Eucharist, I like to just sit and just let it kind of dissolve on my tongue. And I have my little veil on so I could just like sit over, so it's kind of like a horse with blinders, and I can't see anything, and it just feels like it's just me and him. And that is an amazing, amazing experience. If you haven't, you don't have to, obviously, but I think it's a wonderful opportunity. And obviously the ability to touch things, touch relics, we do the peace be with you kind of situation and stuff. And so our faith is very, very sensory. It's not just one that we just read in books and it's all stale and then we just go about our days. It's one that engages all of us in every way that it possibly can. And I think that is so amazing. And to awkwardly go to the next slide. The saints. Again, as a Protestant, the saints were kind of a weird thing for me. I was like, so you guys pray to just some random dead people? That's really weird. But the realization that saints, first off, are people, and we're people, but people that can basically be seen as friends. That a lot of times, patron saint of whatever, it might be a common interest for you, I really like literature. My patron saint is St. Catherine of Bologna. And so I was led to her through literature because that's something that I really enjoy and that's something I really like. And so having her is just another blessing. It's just somebody that I can kind of look towards, okay, what would you have done in this kind of situation? And somebody that is supposed to be for intercession. I'm not praying to this person. This person is like a friend where you're just like, hey, I'm kind of in trouble. Can you kind of, maybe help me out a little bit and talk to Dad for me? Something along those lines. And I think that having a more humanistic view on things like saints to those who, are not fully in the Catholic Church or who just have questions about it, kind of brings them down a little bit to a more realistic level. So, yeah. Thank you.
As for lifelong Catholics, the idea that what we're doing at Mass and with the saints and all of this is countercultural is hard to believe. You grew up with it. It's very normal to you. But actually, to the world at large, when they step into a Catholic church, people who live a very secular life, even if they don't really like it that much, there is still a very strong sense of, wow, what is this? I don't know what I just stepped into. And it's very, grandeur is a good word, and foreign maybe another one. The young people who come to RCIA, for the most part, have gone through the evangelical Protestant world, where their model is they want to do something very relatable, very comfortable to them. So their music sounds like the music on the radio. The way they talk to them sounds the way a secular self-help person would talk to them. And for a while, that's very enticing because it's comfortable. But eventually, it becomes mundane. It becomes nothing special. And they end up coming to the Catholic Church because they know we're not mundane. We're actually reaching for the divine. And the smells and the bells and the saints and all of this prove to them that we're not trying to dumb down our faith to the secular mundane, but trying to lift up our people to something larger. And sure, sometimes we struggle to make that connect, but they sense it and they come for it. So a lot of particularly baby boomer age Catholics they want to say, oh, we're not like that anymore. That's exactly the wrong answer. You need to say, no, we're double what we were 20 years ago. Seriously, that's what they want to hear from us, is that we are really embracing the smells and bells of our faith. It's what they're attracted to. All right, I get to anchor the final segment. So I myself am a convert. I'm a weird duck in that both of my parents graduated from Sacramento area Catholic high schools. I've received all of their sacraments. My mother was in the first graduating class when St. Francis was built here in Sacramento. My dad went to Christian Brothers. But by the time I was born, they had very much left the church. My dad went the way of being an agnostic. My mom became the liberal Methodist type, very secular Methodist type. And for myself, the result of that was I was an atheist by the time I was in high school because they weren't really offering anything meaningfully faith-wise. And I was actually that pain-in-the-neck atheist who liked to challenge people. The person that you know me to be, I was that person in an atheist frame, and so I challenged people and what's wrong with your stupid faith. And thank God the internet isn't what it is today, because there'd be a long record of me being a real pain in the neck. But I think the good thing there was, and maybe when you have somebody like that you're encountered with now, the good thing about a person who really wants to challenge you is, generally speaking, it means it's someone who really wants to talk about real meaty things. And maybe hard to engage with them, but they might actually be somebody who's winnable. And so I was always seeking something. It was very atheistic. I ended up being very scared by my mortality. I very much embraced the idea that I had just this one life, and that was it, and I need to do everything I could to live it to the fullest because it was all I had, but I'd better not live it so full that it ended up being too short, right? It was this kind of weird balance of wanting longevity with wanting a very secular sense of pleasure and joy and fast motorcycles that could kill you. And having to split that difference was this terrifying thing to me. And as I engaged with various people of different faiths, Catholicism was about the only one that I ever felt like I couldn't beat. I'd go up against a Protestant and their fundamentalists and attitudes, and it was just like, you guys are idiots. And, you look at their literalistic reading of the Bible, and you say, this doesn't make any sense. But when you would engage with the serious Catholic, you'd say, okay, I don't know that I can beat that. I mean, I don't know if I agree, but at least seems there's some meat there. There's something that is an opponent to me that's a worthy opponent. And for me, what got me over the hump, and see, we're all going to get all worked up, was my current wife. My only wife. What I mean to say was she was not my wife when I met her. Of course not. What am I saying? Anyway. She is a very kind, gentle person. She is not an intellectual, adversary type person. And actually, if you had asked me at 20 the type of person I wanted to marry, it would have been somebody like that, someone who was going to challenge me, someone who was going to be in my face and in a productive, we together would fight the world and fight each other, and it'd be this really productive intellectual relationship. And she is very much not that. She's very kind, very loving, very giving. But I saw something in her long before I realized that I saw it that attracted me to her. And I don't know why it was I thought that my being an atheist wasn't a problem for her because she was Catholic. But I guess I was too naive, too secular to think that faith differences could be something that would prevent someone from getting married to somebody else. And so I eventually decided I wanted to propose. We were getting to the end of college, and I went out and bought a ring, got down on my knee, proposed, and she started crying. Not a good sign. She said, I just can't. Being married to you will destroy my faith. And I knew it was hard for her. She didn't want to have to say that. She knew she had to, but she didn't want to. And she was, looking back, she had been delaying. She knew that I was wanting to move this direction, and she'd been doing everything in her power to push that out because she knew the moment I asked would be the end of our relationship. And she didn't want that. She loved me. But she also knew she couldn't stay with me the rest of her life. But seeing that strength in her, seeing that she had the fortitude in that moment to say, my faith is that important, that I'm willing to say no to something that I know I really want at one level, but no, I can't do, revealed to me a transcendency I had never seen before then. And so I saw God for the first time. And for me, it was the light bulb moment. I switched like that. I was in RCIA on Sunday. It happened very, very, very quickly. And, they made me wait a decade to be a deacon, but I would have been a deacon that Monday if they had let me. So I think it's because I'd been so intellectually rigorous about attacking faith, but also seeing that Catholicism provided this robust rebuttal, that when I was now over the fence and saw God for the first time, it's like, well, there's the rigor, and I don't need any more than that. I know God's real. I know there's rigor. I'm in, dotted line, please, sign, let's go. So that's my story. The thing I want to talk about for my point, and it really isn't about me, but I think is very important. the world, I guess it ties in a little bit. The world has a very hard time with high standards because they don't really believe in forgiveness. And if you don't really believe in forgiveness, the idea that you might make a mistake that is something that's not appropriate is very scary, because once you've made a mistake, you're a bad person. And so when they see the Catholic faith, for a lot of people, the idea that we have this very high standard about marriage, about morality, about charity, about all of these things, they're very scared of it because it's calling them to something lofty, and they don't want to fall short. And what they often hear about our faith is that we're very judgmental, is how that'll come across to them. What they need to know is, yes, we have a very lofty standard, but we believe in a loving and forgiving God who will be with us as we trip and fall along that journey. We'll keep moving towards that high standard, but redemption and forgiveness is real. And that opens so many doors for so many secular people who can't imagine that idea of true forgiveness, that truly you can fail, you cannot live up to a standard, and there's real forgiveness behind a door there. Our society, for the most part, doesn't believe in it anymore. And so more than hearing what our lofty standards are, what the world needs to hear is, this is a place you can be redeemed. Because the reality is, no matter how low of a bar they set for themselves, including ourselves, we eventually trip over it. And they know that they've failed. And they're desperately looking for redemption. So I think the biggest thing we need to offer to the world is that forgiveness, is that redemption. And then once they're here, then we can work on the high standards. But starting with the high standard scares them. They need to hear that we forgive them. That God forgives them, more accurately. We being the church. Okay. Well, that was a rip-roaring session. Took a lot longer than I thought, but I think we heard some wonderful testimonies. I really want to thank the panel for being open and honest and sharing their lives. I hope you all feel the same way. We will now go through our conclusion slides. For those of you online, if you have any questions, now is the time to get them in so that with the video delay, we'll get them before we wrap up. But then we'll do a few slides of conclusion, and then we'll have time for those questions. So here are the points that we're hiding amongst the stories. 1, accompany people. Be willing to walk the journey with them. Don't give up on them. Recognize that the journey takes time, but going along with them on that journey will bear fruit in time. 2, provide them resources that allow things to be low pressure. People like to read. People like podcasts. People like YouTube channels, radio, etc. Providing them that when people have questions, say, well, here's something to consider in a very low pressure way, allows them to either reject or take it and run with it as they want in a low pressure way, and it'll bear a lot of fruit. Next, live an attractive faith life. So many people were affected by somebody in their life, me, my wife-to-be, children, all kinds of different examples. The more we live a life that people say, I want that, the more people come to our faith. And along those lines, don't forget to share your faith. No, that would be share your faith. Typos galore. Because that's how you show them this attractive faith. Sometimes we don't want to impose, and so we don't want to share our faith. And there is a balance there, but be willing to share. Be willing to let them know the thing that makes your life tick and work is your faith, and that will help them know that that's why that you're an attractive person. Again, promote the smells and bells. We have something special here. We are trying to lift ourselves up to the divine, not trying to dumb our church down to the secular. It's a good thing. I know to some of us it feels common and old and all of that, but actually it brings so many people here. They love it. They love the saints. They love the rosary. They love the incense. They love that their dog may go to heaven. No, I'm not saying that, but Being willing to share all the richness of our liturgical faith is wonderful. And then finally, emphasize the ideas of forgiveness and redemption. Those are the lessons, I think, as a group, we would like you all to know, in addition to sharing how much this church of all of ours has affected all of us and been a beautiful thing to join. Sure. It's all online, by the way. Okay. Satisfaction survey. I always want to hear what you guys think, particularly because this was something new. This is the first time we've ever done a panel discussion. I really triple-double want to hear what you guys think. So for those of you in person, there are the surveys at the door. Fill them out. Just leave them on the table. A weird request. If you say positive things, I don't care what your name is. I really don't care. But if you say something negative, I really would like to know who you are so I can understand. The worst thing for me is getting a negative comment and not being able to reach out and say, oh, I understand, I'm getting what you're saying, but I want to understand more how I can do better. So please, I will contact you, so if you really don't want to be contacted, you cannot put your name, but I would really appreciate it because I would like to reach out and find out how I can make these better. So for those of you online, the link is in the YouTube description, or you can go to the blog and get it there. Oops, this slide shouldn't be here. Next time, our next session is Tuesday, February 7th. We're a week early because I didn't think many of you would come on Valentine's Day. I don't think my wife would have been happy either. So we're going to do it a week early on February 7th, but we're going to keep a romantic theme. We're going to say, how can our Catholic faith improve my marriage? What can we do? What does our faith guide us to be better husbands and wives? I haven't made the rest of the schedule for the year, in part because this group has really grown. I'm very thankful to have you all here, but I'm looking for your topic suggestions. Put that on your satisfaction survey, and I will, by next month, have a schedule for the remainder of the year. Finally, additional information. This is mostly for you online, where you can find all the stuff. DeaconKen.org or ken@deaconken.org for email is the best way to reach out to me. Spiritual direction. I am a trained spiritual director. I went through an Ignatian 2-year training program to do that. For me, I don't think I would be a deacon today if it weren't for the gift of spiritual direction that I received, and I want to be able to pass that on to others. If you are looking for a spiritual director, I have a few more slots. It is not free. It is a pretty significant effort on my part. Many people don't know deacons are not paid. We are an entirely volunteer position. And this is one way that I can make sure that I have time for things like spiritual direction. So I do have one-year scholarship available that one of my current directees has offered. He loves it so much, he's like, I'm willing to pay for someone else for a year to find out how great it is. So if you're someone who is in a place where $500 is too much, we do have someone who will provide that for 1 year, but otherwise $500 a year for monthly direction. To do that, go to either just contact me in any way, but where I'll send you to is the questionnaire form on deaconken.org/spiritual-direction. Finally, YouTube subscribing. The world we live in, you got to have subscribers. I don't know why, it's just the way the world works. So if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do. If you have 6 Gmail accounts, please subscribe 6 times. I need to get to 1,000 subscribers to get all these features. The parish account has 1,000 subscribers, and like if we wanted, we could send you emails. There's all kinds of neat things we can do. I have a measly 262, I believe it is. So only 738 to go, so sign up for a few more Gmail accounts. But please, particularly for those of you online, please subscribe. Okay, with that, on to final questions. I know we're running later than normal. Did we have any questions online? We do. Dang it. We have a camera problem put that on the form. We'll fix it, I promise. It might be muted still. Oh, yeah. All right, maybe just read it and I'll repeat it while that's happening. Yeah, it's not, until the camera's fixed, we won't have that, Lisa. So just say it out loud and I'll repeat it. All right, those are a lot of questions. So basically, how can we introduce people who have no familiarity? How do we know that they might be interested? And how would we go about it? The how to know if they're interested is a really tough part. You kind of have to wait a little bit for some sign that they're reaching out. Yeah, just randomly going on the street, with the big sign, "You have sinned," is not the right strategy. So you do kind of have to wait for some glimpse. It doesn't have to be the biggest glimpse, but just a little glimpse that they're looking for something in their life to do that. But once they've done that, start small, offering little things, and you'll see if they back away, well, then you know that at least at the moment they're not interested in more. But if they start sucking it in, then you go deeper. And this is where accompaniment really comes in. They don't know a lot. They're afraid to go to Mass. They're not sure if they get, their shoes taken from them and they can't leave until they get their shoes back. That sounds ridiculous, but it's closer to the truth than you think. So being willing to accompany them and say, "Oh, yeah, you can come to Mass with me, or we'll go at a time that works for you," can be really, really helpful. So being willing to walk the journey with them, to be open and honest, and for sure, if they're willing to go to something like inquiry, if you can make it clear to them that there's absolutely no commitment, that all they're going to get to do is the opportunity to ask questions about the faith, that if you come twice and then say, "Deacon Ken is a pain in the neck, he doesn't like dogs," and never come back, then that's what happens. We've had people who've come for like 4 sessions, have disappeared for 6 months. Something about the faith brings them back. They come for 2 more sessions. I tick them off again. They go away for 3 months. And then 3 years later, they're like, "I'm in." It finally happened. So it really is something for them on their own time. So that's a pretty big step for a lot of people, but accompaniment is so important in that front. I think that's the best I can do. Was there any more, or is that it? All right, other questions for the group? I think people will be here for a few minutes if you want to just talk to them afterwards, or we're going to have general questions. Can we get the mic over to this gentleman here? Now that it's working again.
Does it work? Okay.
There you go.
Vanessa, I have a question for you. You mentioned your Catholic mother-in-law, so I'm assuming your husband was raised Catholic. How did his faith journey, or how was his faith journey impacted by your faith journey?
Well, he wasn't, because he was working so much, he wasn't practicing anymore. So now he sees my excitement, and then we did the children's faith formation at home, so I was teaching them and learning at the same time that he started certain things that I would bring up, he was like, he didn't know about it from when he was little. He didn't know, so he was like, "Sure, let's go," or I'd say, "It's a holy day of obligation, we have to go." And he's like, "Okay," but now he's so excited. All of us were excited, we go, we read, we're learning together, we're making time now.
Okay, and I ask you because I know that marriage, you were both the channel of God's grace for the other, and so I was intrigued that you're on the same journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very common for one person to get serious about their faith and that to have a big influence on the other. And that will happen even with RCIA. You'll get someone who kind of naturally is interested in Catholicism because their spouse is nominally Catholic but not very serious about their faith. And so Catholic feels like the right way to go, and the inquiring person, they don't really care. If they went to Bridgeway, if their husband went to Bridgeway, they'd go to Bridgeway. They're kind of along for the journey in that sense. But then once that person is now into RCIA and starts to embrace the Catholic faith, all of a sudden the spouse is like, oh, wow, I should have been working on my faith more. And so we get a lot of couples who you have a nominal Catholic and a non-Catholic, and the non-Catholic actually ends up making the nominal Catholic serious about their faith. So that happens a lot, yeah. Oh, the push the gray button to unmute. There you go.
All right, there we go. So, just a question for people online who might be watching or considering Catholicism. One thing I didn't really hear talked about tonight was, what would you say to someone who wants to convert to Catholicism, but if they do, they might suffer like some real social consequences, like friendships will end or family members might disown them or harass them?
Yeah, that's there's a lot of different examples of where that plays out, and it is very unfortunate. I almost feel guilty to this day for a couple that I befriended that both eventually became Catholic, and like neither of their parents want to talk to them anymore because, like, not at the top level, but like they went from having a close relationship to a very distant relationship because they were from an evangelical background and are not okay with their children being Catholic. There's a few different aspects. One is, don't be afraid to go slow on your faith journey when it's causing angst in your own family. Just letting your family know that you're willing to slow down the journey for them shows them how much you care about them. If they can see you're on this journey and you're wanting to go at a very aggressive pace or a more aggressive pace than they're comfortable with, but you're saying, for you, I'm willing to go at a slower pace so that you're more comfortable, that's very helpful. The other thing is to, even when they're angry with you, do your best to respond with charity and love. Because a big part of what they fear is that you're going to be this very different person in a negative way because they have these negative thoughts about the Catholic Church. So to find out that you're the same person you always were and better, by keeping that relationship and seeing that happen over time, they're more likely to embrace what you're doing eventually. Now, will that always happen? No. As I said, these in-laws are still not happy with this couple I'm friends with, so it doesn't always happen that way. But it's more likely to happen if you're willing to go slow it down and make sure that you are very communicative with them of the journey you're on so that they can see you're still the person that they love and care for, and that if anything, you're that person and better. And then, yeah, be willing to talk to them, you know. Hopefully they'll see the wisdom of what you're doing. But it can be hard, and there are some very tough stories out there, and sometimes there's no getting around it, and you have to make some difficult decisions. If there's one group I very strongly caution is if it is going to risk severing your marriage, and that does happen, I tell people to put a real big break on it for a while, because marriages are important, and we shouldn't take lightly the fact that one spouse is not okay with a change like this. You know, you're bound to each other. So that's a really tough one, and it's one of the few places I will not only suggest it as a possibility, but strongly suggest it as something they should consider, and give that person some time. So, yeah, generally speaking, my thought is slow it down, be communicative, be charitable even when not being treated charitably yourself. Final questions before we wrap up? Yeah, it's still on, I think. Nice and close to the mouse.
They didn't, but my father he had done some research and stuff like that. So.
They got it sort of backwards. They got it from other sources, and then the missionaries can fill them in.
Yeah. All right, so as I said, I'm sure everyone will be here for a few minutes if the people have some private conversations they'd like to have. I thank everyone for coming. I particularly thank my panel for being willing to share. I know it was a little scary and a little overwhelming, and I really, really appreciate it. I hope everyone here appreciates their effort. In fact, let's give them a big round of applause for doing so. And let's finish with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together this evening and for the many ways that you bless us. As we go forth, help us to remember that there are people in this world who are seeking you and don't know how to find you. Give us the wisdom to know how to be a voice of you to them so that they can find your fullness of truth here in the Catholic Church. We ask all of this through Christ our Lord and Savior. Amen. God bless you all. Have a wonderful evening.